All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It is welcome back for the Engineering Evolved episode 3, the Engineering Evolved podcast, episode 3. I am here once again with my co-host, my compatriot, Pavel Krupa. How are you doing this afternoon, Pavel?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful. How about you, Brent?
I am good. I had a rough start today and was able to go through and process through managing the stress using the methods that I know work. It's crazy how they work. Like it's insane when you think that there are actually ways to get through it, which is a great tie-in because last week we had a great conversation around managing stress. We talked about, the importance of managing stress and some of the different ways to manage stress. We had a little bit of a conversation in our 30 minutes about the stress of kind of coming to the US. And you talked about just the variance between interviewing with someone from the US and interviewing from someone with Europe, and even just that stark difference. And so when we were talking about topics for the week, we thought, hey, let's just go again on this managing stress, because this really is one of the pivotal issues inside of the engineering community, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And not many people talk about this. So I'm very happy that we can elaborate a little bit more on that topic.
Yeah. So Engineering Evolved podcast 3, managing stress, part 2. So wanting to dive in. Now I don't have the experience of traveling to a different country to try to find work, right? But that's something that is a very real, that was a very challenging transition for you. So, the first topic we want to talk about today is just the challenges and the stress of traveling to any country, right? Leaving your home country and going to another country to work. Yeah. What is that like? And I know you can talk about coming from Poland to the US, but I think it's common for anybody who does travel, who leaves home to go find work. Like, just talk to me about how that stress is, because that's something I haven't really ever considered, right? Being here in the US and having people come in, it's I know there's visas and there's paperwork and there's all the different stuff, but I had really never considered the amount of stress that might come with that. So, like, tell me about that. Like, how did that work? Where did you start? When did you decide to come to the US?
That was actually a very, very long time ago. Like, I have some family here in the US. So I've been here when I was very young, as a teenager.
Okay.
And I liked it. I liked it. And after
you were just
that,
visiting?
Yeah, I just came for like vacation, just take a look. I was 12 years old, so I was like much younger than I am now. But that was my first introduction to the US. That was the first time I've seen US, and I liked it. I like the styling here. I like the people. So I think since then, I was always like trying to go towards the goal of coming here to see how it is really to live and work in the US. So I planned this quite some time ago, and I was just making slowly progress of coming here.
Okay.
Now,
let's talk a little bit about your schooling. Like, you made a decision that you were going to come to the US. And then you made the decision that you wanted to go work on robots, right?
Yes. Well, robots came by accident. Well, not really by accident, but kind of. I wanted to do IT, but during like my technical school, I met I think I can say like an instructor that founded like a school, and one of the topics in that school was like mechatronics and robotics.
Okay.
And he kind of introduced this to us, and I was actually like in my last semester in my technical school, and like he came like, hey, okay, we have this robotic thing, and I was like, that sounds interesting. And I was like 100% sure that I'm going into IT until like literally last week of my schooling, when I said, okay, no, that has to change. And I changed from like IT into the automation field. So I applied for automation, actually mechatronic studies, and that's how everything started from me in terms of robotics. But if we talk about going to the US, coming here for work, that started way earlier. I actually was not thinking about this like throughout the entire process. It was just like in back of my head as a plan. But it's not that I was like every day thinking, okay, I'm going to come here, like I'm going to look for work. This more showed, I would say, probably around end of my studies, where I actually started to look for work. And when I was trying to find what I want to do in life and like what my goals will be for the future.
Okay.
So that's where I started to look for job in the US market. And that's like, oh, when I wanted to see how is it to work outside of my home country, and like what challenges it's going to bring to me.
All right. So what was like your first major stressor? So you're going through school, you made a decision to go into automation and mechatronics and robotics, and the world is glad that you did. Uh, where was your first stressor? Like, where was your first, like, okay, this is something that I'm going to have to really work through?
Oh, that will be, I would say that starts at the very beginning, at the moment that you start sending CVs. So you go through the process of like applying to the job to do something else in other country, like, and you're going to apply for a job and that you're unfamiliar with the recruiting process outside of your country, because you know some patterns, you learn some, or you can Google some behaviors during the or questions during the interview. But when it comes to coming to a different country, you don't know the behavior of the people that you'll be speaking with. You don't know what are the expectations, what are the questions, what is the approach to the work that they do.
Right.
So the moment I was sending CVs, I was like, well, okay, I'm sending those CVs, but like, what will be the questions? Like, how I'm going to behave during the interviews? So that was like the first moment where the stress kind of showed up. Yeah. So I was like, well, okay, that is going to be stressful, but like, well, let's do it. Let's see what life is going to bring to me, and like what I have to challenge when it comes to the interview. So that was like something that I knew I would be aware of the stress coming, but I didn't know like what is it really going to be when it comes to the point of the interview. That was like my first stressor, sending the resumes and like realizing like, oh, what's going to happen when it really happens.
Yeah. Now, how far had you gotten along with your English, and like how fluent were you when you were trying to send out these resumes? What year was this, by the way?
Oh, that was 2014.
Okay.
So
like
almost
how
9
fluent
years
were you
ago.
in English at that time?
I would say I was okay communicating. Definitely the level that I had was significantly lower than what I do now. But I think it was enough to like communicate like in terms of work and in terms of like doing the interview. I could understand everything.
Right.
But there was a lot of technical knowledge that I was lacking. And that's something nobody would teach you at school. At least like in Poland, you won't learn the technical specific words that you use in our industry over there. So that was very challenging, because when somebody asks you that question and you don't understand like the main point, right? Because somebody will say something that's very specific for the industry, and like, well, I don't know what does it mean. So now you have to, okay, I'm sorry, could you rephrase that, or can you say it in a different way? And
Right.
I gotta say, the interviews I had, most of the people were like very friendly, which was different for me comparing to the Polish experience.
Right.
So I think people were very understanding, and they knew that there is like the language barrier that might be there when you're interviewing somebody from outside. But going through the interview itself, that was stressful. That's for sure, because I was interviewed in like not my native language.
Right.
However, like I'm saying, the process went fluent, and the first steps taken in order to move to the US were done by me right at that time. Yeah, the interview has happened, and I knew, okay, it was possible to come to the US. That was like, I thought that was the biggest stressor for me, going through the interview, but like I was not aware what's to come, and there was many more steps that I needed to go through that were even more stressful than the interview itself.
Got it. So one of the biggest stresses was just kind of getting over your internal stories of saying, this is going to be hard, and being willing to put yourself out there and be vulnerable and say, okay, I'm going down this path. Because once you hit send on that CV at resume, you're actually like, you're raising your hand to say, hey, I'd like to have this conversation. I'd like to put myself in this extremely stressful situation of interviewing, not in my native language, and without this substantial base of technical language, which that could be an entire different subject, is the challenges of speaking technically in languages, right? I'm going to write that down. Because I've noticed that with different people from Mexico or Japan or France, right? They come over and clearly they know what they're doing. They're gifted at what they're doing, but the language barrier around the pure technical component is sometimes giant. So that's we'll call that a topic for a different day. So you get the interviews going, you get the resumes going. What was the next biggest stressor, and how did you deal with this stress at the time? Like obviously you've built the muscle of handling stress
Yeah.
over time, but what did you do in those moments? Like how did you handle it back then? Like when you started?
I haven't had any methods back then for like stress dealing. So like I wasn't really aware. Like I said, like we talked last week, I didn't know how to handle it because like at my school or like even in my studies, nobody taught me. Like they told me there would be stress, but nobody taught me how to handle it.
Right.
So that was kind of like a life, I would say, life experience. But what happened is when we talk about stress, also what helped me before, I was already working in the field back then during that time,
Right.
and I already had a stressful situation at work that happened.
Okay.
And one thing that my former boss told me, which I think I remember and I still use until this day, is like when it comes to a stressful situation, especially when you're at work and somebody relies on you and somebody calls you because something broke down.
Right.
Most likely they call you because you're the expert matter that they will try to help to fix whatever is broken.
Right.
So what he said is basically, if they call you, you have to remember that they trust in your work and they wouldn't call you if they would not know that you're not able to fix it. So it
Okay.
doesn't matter what's going to happen. It's like you are the best at what you do and you're going to do the best to fix that issue.
Right.
Like you might fail in the end, but you will put all of the effort trying to make it happen.
Right.
And that's something that kind of kept me going for many issues that happened during the work, and that's what kept me going with the CVs and like sending out the resumes and doing the code. I'm like, okay, I'm here. I know that I wanted to be here. I put a lot of effort in order to be here. I got prepared to be here. So now doesn't matter what happened. I am going to do my best to manage that stress and to go through the interview. So that was kind of my mindset going into that interview. Like, okay, I am here to succeed. Even if I fail, that's okay. I've done my best to the moment. That's how I prepared, and this is the best that I am at right now, and I have to handle it. So that was my way of handling it back then.
Absolutely. So being able to at least give yourself enough space and hold space for the fact that you have the expertise, they're calling you for a reason, and you are capable of solving the problem, right?
Yep.
Brute force, I can do it, right? Which
Kind of, yes.
brings about its own stressors, but it's a way to get the job done. And one of the things that does is that actually builds certainty, right?
Yeah.
And once you take action, once you're taking actions and you're starting to build certainty, that is a really powerful thing. All right, so you came over here. How long did it take you to get a job in the US?
So actually, when I was coming to the US, I already had the job. So in order for us, like people from Europe, at least, well, let's say Poland, you want to come to the US for work, you need to have the work visa before you come to the US.
Okay.
So basically, I had the interviews with the company in the US, and then I needed to undergo all of the visa process. Once the visa process was completed, then I was able to go to the US. So there was an additional stressor of going to the embassy, of having an interview and like trying to explain why are you going to the US, what you're going to do. And then, it's extra stress because you're going here for work, but you're not, like I was a young person. I was in my 20s. So I was like, I don't have that much of a work experience. And like when I applied for work in the US, and they'd be like, well, you don't have much of a work experience. What are you going to do in the US? Where are you going there? And so on, so on. All
Right.
those questions were like rolling inside my head. But when it came to the interview, it was like, again, a very nice process. It was with somebody that's from the US. So that was already like, I remembered like all of the, if you would say, friendliness and like all of the kind questions that they asked. So in my head, it was very stressful. But when it came to the process itself, it was a very nice and pleasant experience for me. So I came here already for work, but that doesn't matter that the stress was less because I came to an environment that I didn't know. And like I mentioned last week, the people that I don't know. And now, out of experience, what I would say, the stress that you're going to have, I think it's hard to describe, but it's often on how does your manager manage that stress. Because the first person that you're going to meet when you're back in the US is your manager. And now if
Right.
he's aware of the difficulties of like traveling to a different country and like all of the obstacles that the person might need to overcome in order to achieve that, how he will welcome you and how he'll introduce you to the team, that's another topic, right?
Right.
So that was like a key item. Like I was introduced with like a very friendly process. So like for the managers right nowadays, especially like in the US, when there are people from multiple countries that you might manage or work with, it's very important like how you're going to do the introduction part of your new team member.
Right.
And then it all comes to like how well are you going to bond with the people that you work with, yeah? So like,
Absolutely.
are you going to be accepted? Like, are you going to be rejected? Are you going to be accepted? Like, are you going to make new friends? That's like another process that you have to go through when you're moving to like, even from work to work, but then you move from work to work and you meet people that do not speak the language that you do. Your language
Right.
is not as good as theirs. Like, it'll be very hard to make it as good as they do. And there's a lot of things, a lot of questions, because like we said last week, you don't know anything about the place. Like everything is new for you. So
Right.
like there's a huge pile of the stress that builds up. And then like those first days, I think it's really up to you, of course, like how good, what tools do you have to manage the stress. But then again, I would say it's going to be on the manager, how well aware he is of like what you are going through and like how he can support you in that process, in that transition.
Right. So the environment that you walk into, right? Not only are you going into an environment that's new, but you're going into an environment where you have the language barrier and perceived
Yeah,
biases, or whether they're perceived or real, right? We
correct.
could talk about whether or not you've experienced bias or bigotry, which my guess is you probably have. But the dependence on the emotional intelligence and the ability of the manager to lead a team and welcome you in the right way, because that's it. There's an extra level there, right? You come in and you're like, hey, here's the new guy. That's great. But hey, here's the new guy, Pavel. He's from Poland. His English isn't great, but I promise you he's good at robots, right? Like there's
Yeah,
different ways that you could bring somebody in and invite them in. And there's ways you
yep,
could probably do it really poorly.
correct. Exactly. And
Do you
that,
have any examples of a really poor introduction or a really poor landing, a poor environment that you got walked into?
so personally, luckily, I haven't experienced any of that. However, I've seen some of the people being introduced to the team and being left alone. So like, hey, this is your new guy. See you. That's it. Like no information, no background about the person, no like introduction, like what role he's going to take in the company or like what's going to happen with him. It's like the manager will just come, like brought him in, like this is your desk or like this is your workplace. Those are your friends. Like, hey guys, this is I don't know, let's say John, and John just came to work. Everybody was like, okay, and like then what happened is like the manager created an extreme level of stress for the new person because like
Right.
what is he going to say, right? Like I'm a new guy, like I don't know anybody, like I don't even know the half the names of the people. Like everybody say hi, my name is, but like you won't remember because you're stressed out.
Right.
So that's why I say like manager is a key, manager and introduction to the team is a key item in the process of like getting familiar with your team members and getting familiar with what you're going to do in your work. If that step
Absolutely.
is not done correctly, that's like a recipe for failure.
Yes. 100%. And that's regardless of whether you're coming from another country or coming into a new job. But
Yep.
when you come from a different country or when you come from a different culture into that, it just gets amplified so much more, right?
Exactly.
Here's this
Exactly.
Polish guy. Who is he?
Yeah. Yeah. Like no one knows him. Like, okay, what is he doing here? Like, why is it even he here if he's from Poland and from the US, right? That might also happen.
Right. Well, I still remember the first time that you and I met, right? So I'm a maintenance supervisor and I'm walking through and we have a cell that's not running on a break, right? We're on
Yep.
a break and I come through and there's somebody with robot pendant in hand who I've never seen before. And I think I walked up to you, I was like, hey, who are you
What are
and
you
why
doing?
are you
Yeah.
touching the robots,
Yep.
right? Like
Yep.
that's an example. And the environment we were in, that was more expected. We had contractors in and everything else there, but that's an example, right? You and I grew into very good colleagues at work. But that introduction was still, this is what it looks like when you don't tell people and you don't communicate
Exactly.
what's going on. It creates a
Exactly.
stressful situation. I was wondering, who is this guy with the really fancy European robot pants? Like, I knew that you knew what you were doing because everybody I've ever seen with the fancy, like, back knee zipper robot pants, everybody I've ever met with those has a pretty good idea what's going on. But still, I didn't know why you were touching the robots on the cell that I was responsible for. So that created a stressful situation, right?
Exactly. Like for me and for you, like I didn't know who you were, like why you're coming asking me questions. Like I came here to do the job. The people I worked with told me, okay, you're gonna go there to fix it. And like some guy is coming to me and like, what does he want? Like I'm doing my thing. Why is he asking questions? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Who's
Exactly.
it? Who's this guy with a bow tie who's trying to talk to me and ask me what I'm doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That was my first thought.
So it's an example of the importance of communication from a manager level and the importance of a top-down leadership approach that communicates and brings communication to the forefront. Because without a top-down communication as a foundation process, that just adds stress to everybody, right? How many different people can make different assessments? If you and I aren't both as emotionally intelligent as we are, that interaction could have led to a negative discourse very quickly, right?
Yep. Correct.
Well, I don't know who you are. Get out of my way. I'm doing my job. Or, I come up to you and instead of like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, get out of my cell. I don't know who you are. You're not allowed to be here, right? That could have gone really poorly in 1,000 different ways. So it's communication and emotional intelligence are so important, but it's got to be from the top down.
Yep.
All right. So what else? What's your biggest, like, I think this is going to hit a lot of people because I don't think a lot of people like myself had really even considered the extra stress of trying to come to the US and the extra paperwork. What's the biggest takeaway that you could give to somebody? Let's go with 2. What's the biggest takeaway you could give to someone who is coming and trying to land and trying to work in a different country from a stress standpoint? And then what's the biggest thing that you could tell people who are here who aren't aware, like I was not aware of, the stress levels?
I think if I were to make 2 points, number one, there is some part that you can prepare for. So you can do your own research regarding the country, the visa process, coming to the country, and that helps a lot because you might know then by what's coming towards you, like what's going to happen when you go through that process.
Right.
But the second thing is like you are unable to prepare on what's to come when you actually arrive to your final destination. So the only thing I think that you can do is like just be yourself and remember that somebody called you there for a reason. You're not there by accident. You're there by your choice and by someone's choice. So they didn't call you there just to see like how well you will do. Like they already interview you. So you're coming there with a purpose. And remember, just keep that in the back of your head. Okay, I'm coming there with a purpose. Like they didn't call me by accident. I am here to do something good. And that should like kind of drive you on and help you with managing that uncertainty, I would say, that can happen when you land in that new country. I think that will be the biggest takeaway, and I think that's something that kind of drove me, and I hope that's something that can help others.
Got it. Awesome. So that is a huge topic. And then that's the people that were coming. What about the people who are here and having people come in from a different country?
I would like them to be aware of, like we spoke today, what are they bringing in? Like what type of stress and what type of like emotional baggage are they carrying with them when they're onboarding?
Right.
And just like be aware that the first day or the first week or the first 2 weeks or the first month, they are kind of like silent. They actually might need some help by like encouraging them to like speak and showing them that their support. Like, okay, hey man, you make mistakes. Like we don't care. Like you're a new guy. Like we're going to work with you. Don't worry. Like your language, the barrier is going to be like fixed over time. You will learn more. You'll be more fluent. You'll know more. And over time, like after the first week, month, or so on, you won't feel that you are a different person. So basically, I would say just to treat the new person as you're treating somebody that's from the US. There should be no difference in like who that person is. However, you have to be aware that he is undergoing some additional processes in his head and additional stress that you can support by saying, don't worry, we're here with you. Thanks for coming. We're glad that you're here. What are you doing? And just start some little bit of a chit chat about like, hey, how are you? Like, where did you come from? What do you think about this? How was your process? Like, what have you done before? And so on and so on. And that will kind of ease that stress by like the person not needing to perform and like show how good he is at something, or like, where did he come from? But having just like a friendly conversation on the just friends level. And that is kind of slowly dragging you into the work environment and the people that you will be working with.
Absolutely. So if you're a manager, if you're an engineering leader and you're watching this, the things you need to be aware of, right? One, top-down communication is absolutely pivotal in your organization. And if you are not the driver of that, then you are causing the problem, right? If you are not the solution, you're the problem. And as you bring in people from different countries or different cultures, and it's becoming more and more prevalent, more and more commonplace, recognizing that the additional stress that these people are coming in with, right? These men and women are coming in with, of not only coming to a new place, but they're coming to a new job and a new culture and everything else. When you are doing this, it is something that you are going to have to be aware of. You don't have to coddle them. You get to treat them the same. But as you do this, need to be aware of the fact that there are additional stressors that you might not be aware of. And it's so critically important to have an onboarding process and an introduction and a general awareness of them as a human being and the stresses they're going under. Because everybody remembers the joy of their first day, but I think a lot of people tend to forget the stress. And coming from a different culture in just is an extra level of stress and an extra stressor that's really, really need to be made aware of. Because you could have somebody who's brilliant at what they do, and on day one, first impression, if it's a, hey, here's Pavel, and you walk away, you just lost a chance to work with one of the best robotic engineers on the planet, right?
Yep. And there is one more thing that I forget to mention, actually, that I think is important for people that are coming outside of the country that you're working with.
Right.
If you come to a team that has team members that are from the same country that as you moved into, so let's say you have people from Poland in the team that you're going to work with.
Yep.
Do not try to keep with those guys only, because this is going to bring you issues going further, because then you're being again stuck in your ethnicity group, and you're being stuck in your old environment, and you're not accepting what's to come. And then you might become more isolated to the work, more isolated to the people, and more isolated to the country that you're trying to live within or work within. And what that will force in the future is, like, when you go outside of the work, you're going to try to look for the people of your culture, people of your language, and this is going to bring you additional stressors, because you might not be able to find as many as you like, or the ones that you find are not going to be as friendly as you were expecting. And then you'll keep pushing away from the people that are from the US and or any country that you'll be at. And that is bringing additional stress to your life, because you'll be like, well, I can't find any friends, I'm lonely, and so on and so on. That's going to like start a new wheel that would start turning and just create more and more stress in your life.
Right. So the stress of self-isolation that you bring about when you come into an environment where you have someone who is from the same culture, a pivotal first step is to not let yourself, don't fall into that comfort, right? Don't fall into that comfort place of just being isolated to the people you're comfortable with, because what that is going to do in the long-term stressor of keeping that isolation, of keeping yourself in that little box, is going to build up over time and actually create a big problem.
Yep. Exactly.
Awesome. So Pavel, we had a plan when we came in. We were going to talk about two topics. We were going to talk about the stress of the US, and we're going to talk about what happens when you don't manage the stress. And we are at our 30 minutes. And guess what? We had a fantastic conversation. I learned so much from this conversation. Thank you. And I think this means is maybe not next week, because I think 3 weeks in a row of managing stress, we don't necessarily want to be the managing stress podcast. But I think that there's definitely a time to come back to the importance of managing stress, and the negative components of what that can do. And so I think actually we have a potential guest coming on sometime in November that we can talk about, who, if we can get them on, they are a high performance consultant, high performance coach, and would be able to help with that managing stress conversation. So maybe we'll table that till we get there. We'll figure it out. But for everyone watching, please remember, here's a few things, key takeaways from today, right? One, the stress that somebody has in coming from a different culture, the stress that you might have in going from a different culture, is going to be in addition to everything else that happens when you go into a new job. So keep aware of that. Be aware of that. If you're going to be somebody that's in a place where someone's coming in, regardless of who comes in, be a friendly face and be someone who can make a connection. That can have such a pivotal change on a career, right? Two, as a manager, from the leading and from the top end down, make sure that communication and extra attention is given to everybody when they come in, and make sure that you're aware of the additional stress that somebody coming from a different culture has. Pavel, what was your biggest main takeaway as you talked through this story again?
Again, for the people that are moving in, don't be afraid to speak, guys. Really, the language barrier is only in your head. It's not something that's in front of you. That's something that you're creating. So don't be afraid to speak. Talk with your colleagues. Don't try to look just for the friends and supporters that speak the language or are from the same country. Try to reach out to the others. Everybody should be able to support you. Like, do not stick only within your culture, because you might get locked for your future, and that might be something that might lock you from pursuing your new goals or looking for something new.
Absolutely. Well, Pavel, thank you again. Engineering Evolved podcast number 3. Once again, one of these days, I'm going to figure out how to get this call to action in the beginning of the episode. But if you're watching this live, I want you to comment #live. If you're watching this on a replay, I want you to comment #replay. And for everyone, please hit the buttons wherever you're watching this that tells the world that you like what we're doing, so that we can continue to go. If you have a topic, if you have a comment, please leave it in the comments, or please leave it as a topic suggestion for us at engineeringevolved.com. I am Brandon E. Grant, signing off for the afternoon. We will see you again next week on Wednesday, the 18th at 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific. Pavel, you got any last words, my friend?
That's all. Thank you, guys. Thanks for watching.
All right, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon. See you next time.